Very, very powerful words. When we hear those words, we hear Source singing those words to you. I'll give you the sun, the rain, the moon, the stars, the mountains. I'll give you the world. That's what Source, the ultimate lover, the first lover, is saying to us at all times. Because you're worthy. You're worthy of love, unconditional. You're worthy of love, unending. You're worthy of love. Well, good morning, Celebration Spiritual Center. How's everybody feeling? How you doing? Beautiful, beautiful. So I do want to ask you before we get into it, if you could please keep Pastor Yolanda and her family in prayer. There was death in her family this week. It was a very shocking death, and the family is really just trying to move through it and trying to wrap their minds around it all. So I just ask that you would please keep her and her family in West Virginia in prayer because it is definitely needed right now. So last week, we started this beautiful series, Free Your Mind. We started with the Don't Know Mind. The Don't Know Mind was based on looking at the first question of the work. It's a very simple question. Is it true? And what I shared in that message was that in order for us to actually get to the Don't Know Mind, in order for us to get to the question, is it true, we have to adopt a Don't Know Mind. It's really this place that Socrates talked about, or as I said, Erykah Badu sang about. The man that knows something knows that he knows nothing at all. And so this is how we adopt the Don't Know Mind, and then we're able to ask this question to a belief that we may have held, a belief that may seem true, may seem factual in our heads until we question it. But you can't even get to the place of questioning until you've adopted the Don't Know Mind. Now, I also shared in that message, I invite you to go back to the first series that we did on the work in February of 2015. It was simply titled The Work, 4 questions that can change your life, because that will support you as we're moving through this series. And also, this series is inspired by Byron Katie's latest book, A Mind at Home with Itself. So I invite you to get that text if you so desire. Now, I ended last week's message by taking us through a scenario that Byron Katie shares with a businessman who was upset with his partner. This week, what we're going to do is we're going to start with a scenario, but I'm only going to look at the first 2 questions because this is still where we are. The first question, is it true? The second question, can you absolutely know that it's true? And so she shares the story in A Mind at Home with Itself with a woman named Joanna. And Joanna was there to do the work, and the belief that she held that she wanted to work through and question is simply, I'm upset with Dave because he walked away without giving me a hug or acknowledging me. I'll say that again. I'm upset with Dave because he walked away without giving me a hug or acknowledging me. So Byron Katie says, okay, so what's the situation? Where are you? Give me a picture of where you and Dave are. And Joanna goes on. She says, we were in the house, and he walked out the door to go to his car. And Byron Katie replies, he walked away without giving you a hug or acknowledging you. Is it true? First question. Joanna immediately replies, yes. He turned around and walked out of the house, walked to the car. I chased him to the car, and I was throwing my hands up, and he looked at me and said, what's going on? I looked at him and I said, what's going on? And he said, what? I said, are you just going to leave? I felt completely unacknowledged. Byron Katie replies, sweetheart, the answer to the first 2 questions is 1 syllable, yes or no. When we do the work, we meditate on a stressful moment in time. Notice how your mind will want to justify your position and defend it and talk about it. Just notice that. Then come back to meditating on the question, is it true? Until you're shown a solid yes or a solid no, okay? He walked away without giving you a hug or acknowledging you. Can you absolutely know it's true? You don't have to guess. Images will show you the answer. It takes stillness. Be a detective. If you believe it's true, be a detective. Try to prove yourself wrong, but be authentic. You can't fool yourself. Let the images show you. It takes courage to look. So can you absolutely know that it's true? And Joanna replied, no. And so there's something here that Byron Katie says that we're going to focus in on that I love. She said, be a detective. If you believe it's true, be a detective. So what we're doing when we come to the work through this inquiry, we're like detectives. We're like a cop who's been given a case. And you may walk into this case, the belief you're holding in your mind, and you're saying, yes, it's true. And if it's true, then you should be able to prove that it's true. So what we're doing as we're doing the work, we're going to be a detective. If we believe it's true, we're going to be a detective. So we're going to be looking at some uninvestigated beliefs. We're going to be looking at, if you will, cold cases of the mind. And in order to be a detective, in order to deal with these cold cases, in order to deal with these uninvestigated beliefs, there are three things that we're going to look at. First, there's some words that we need to look for. As we're a detective and we're looking at this belief, and if it's true, it's going to be proven to be true, and if it's false, it's going to be proven to be false. There's some words we need to look for. Secondly, there's a question. As a detective doing the work, we must always ask ourselves. And finally, in order to deal with these uninvestigated beliefs and to be a proper detective, we have to get still. So there's something that Byron Katie writes in the little book of the work. She says, the truth is prior to every story. Now you notice here what happened in this conversation with Joanna, right? Joanna, instead of answering the question, one syllable, yes or no, she started to go to the story, right? She started to tell us everything that happened and how she felt and all of these things. But what's interesting is the truth is prior to the story. And so it's as a detective and recognizing that we're investigating these beliefs, we recognize that first we want to get ahead of the story to the truth. And so in order for us to do that, there's some words that we have to look out for. There's some words that always take us out of the truth and keep us in the story. I know you're familiar with these words. You've heard them before. Words like should. Another word like shouldn't. Another word, always. And finally, never. As an investigator, as a detective, when you hear these words, you recognize you're dealing with some uninvestigated beliefs. Uninvestigated beliefs like Donald Trump should not be the president of the United States. See, should, shouldn't, always, and never, those are words that the ego uses. Love never uses those words. It's not in its vocabulary. Or how about this one? The NFL should care about black people. The NFL, somebody in NFL should hire Colin Kaepernick, right? Or how about this one? He always forgets my birthday. She never says, I love you. Should, shouldn't. Always, never. And the thing about these statements, although they may feel true at different points in time, none of them feel good when we affirm them, do they? That's the other thing about these words and why we know it can take us out of the truth and keep us locked in the story. And as an investigator, we listen in and feel into our emotional vibration and say, wait, when I say Donald Trump should not be the president of the United States, how do I feel? I get pissed off. I get angry. I want to argue with everybody that thinks otherwise, right? He always forgets my birthday. How do you feel when you believe that thought? Byron Katie says, I found that when I believe my thoughts, I suffer. So as detectives today, the first thing we must do is make sure that we're looking for these words. Should, shouldn't, always, and never. These are words that take us out of the truth. Now, secondly, there's a question that we must ask. This question I love. This actually came up in 4Ts this week. The question is simple. Whose business am I in? As you're investigating these cold cases, these uninvestigated beliefs, and you're holding this thought that you are affirming to be true, ask yourself, you're a detective now, whose business am I in? Byron Katie writes, I can find only three kinds of business in the universe: mine, yours, and God's. For me, the word God means reality. Reality is God because it rules. Anything that's out of my control, your control, and everyone else's control, I call that God's business. And so what she asked then, she says, if you are living your life and I am mentally living your life, who's here living mine? If you are living your life and I am mentally living your life, who is here living mine? See, that's where these should, shouldn't, always, and never takes us to. I'm living that person's life. He should know better. Meanwhile, I'm not dealing with what I need to know better, right? It actually puts me outside of myself. And what's interesting about that, in putting it outside of yourself, this creates separation. And separation is the cause of all suffering. We'll go back real quick. We'll go to the Bible. The story of Adam and Eve is an allegorical, mythological story to try to show us what separation feels like. Adam and Eve are not real people, all right? But this story was written, I love even how the A Course in Miracles says that it's been taught to us as this was the story of the fall, and that's actually a misapplication. It's not the right word. What A Course in Miracles says is we should call it the story of separation, because that's what happened. So we have Adam and Eve, that they were in the garden. They had everything they could ever need. There was no lack. There was no limitation. They were wealthy, and they were connected to God, aligned with source, with their source, their creator. And there was nothing that they could not be, nothing that they could not do, nothing that they could not have, right? And they were admonished, you could eat of every tree in the garden except for what? The tree of duality, the tree of separation. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil creates separation. And so God was trying to help them out, saying, if you eat this, this is actually going to take you to a place that you don't want to go to, right? But they ate of the tree. And what happened? They immediately experienced separation between themselves. They covered themselves because they thought they were no longer one. They were no longer a true couple, right? They now needed to hide from each other. But not only did they need to hide from each other, they hid themselves from God. God is walking through the garden. Again, this is a story. God doesn't walk through the garden, right? Unless it's you. When you walk through the garden, you're God walking through the garden. But we recognize that God was walking through the garden. According to the story, Adam and Eve are hiding. And they're hiding, and he's like, where are you? And they're like, oh, we're hiding from you, God, because we're naked. What does God reply? Who told you you were naked? That tells us then that God was not seeing them as bad. God was not seeing them as unworthy. God was not seeing them as sinful. But what happened? Because you believe that there's something wrong with you, separation. You cannot be in this place of plenty. You cannot be in this place of wealth. You cannot be in this place of having everything you need. And now you must suffer. Now you must work at the sweat of your brow. Now you must experience pain because of this thought of separation. Separation always causes suffering. It's the root. And that's what that story was there to teach us. Not to teach us that mankind is inherently sinful and bad and wrong, and we needed a person to be assassinated and mutilated on a cross in order for us to be redeemed. It's not what that story was about. But it was a writer's and a group of writers' attempt to try to put symbolic language around what happens when we're born. In truth, before we come into this world, we're in Eden. When we're born into this world, we're born into the world of separation. We're born into the world of opposites. And so what our journey is about is coming back to the oneness. Our journey in this life is about coming back to the unity. Our journey in this life is about coming to the truth that we are aligned and actually never separate from our source except when we think we are. Yes. And so Byron Katie goes on and she talks about being, whose business are we in? Trying to change people leaves you in a hopeless state of mind because you just can't do it. That's what I love about reality. It is what it is. It won't accommodate itself to you. However you try to will it or force it or trick it or positive think it into changing. As I often say, if you argue with reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time. People change or they don't. It's not your business. Your business is to understand your own mind. So as we are detectives, as we are investigating these beliefs, we got some words that we need to look for as we're opening up these cold cases. And then we recognize that we need to ask ourselves, whose business are we in? Because the only business that we should ever be in is our own, to understand our own mind. Because when we understand our own mind, then we create elegantly. Then we create easily and effortlessly, and we move out of suffering. Now, if we go back to this story with Joanna, There's something that I love here that Byron Katie says, and I've heard her come back to this many times as I've watched her do the work with different people. She writes, or she says rather, when we do the work, we meditate on a stressful moment in time. And I love that she brings us back to the idea that actually these questions, it's a meditation. And it's an opportunity for us to be still and allow the answer, not force the answer. And many times we think we know the answer, or because we feel pain, we're willing to ask the question. So we're like, yeah, I really know it's not true, but I need to go through this work. And in truth, we don't know it's true, right? Because we wouldn't be feeling the pain. We wouldn't be feeling the angst. And so she's inviting us to move into a meditative place. And so as a detective, we got to get still. And there's a song we sing here at CSC, and I think we sang it just a couple weeks ago. I get still and I let God love me. And I've shared with Soul 21 many times that the original version of that song says, I need to get still and let God love me. And so as we're detectives and as we are willing to ask these first two questions, is it true? Can I absolutely know that it's true? It's bringing us, we need to get to this place of I need to get still. Because the pain that I'm feeling, the angst that I'm feeling, the stress that I'm feeling, the anxiety that I'm feeling right now, it's terrible, it's awful, I don't like it, I need to get still, I need to get still, I need to get still. If you're a fan of The Wire, I'm reminded of the scene, although many people don't like the second season, it was a brilliant season. And you might remember the character Frank Sabatka, right? And Frank Sabatka had gotten to this place where, you know, he was trying to do the right thing, and ultimately his intentions were good, but he got tied in with the wrong people. And he knew everything was about to hit the fan. He knew that he was going to get caught. He knew that the cops were on to him. And he was trying to figure out a way to make things better. And I just hear this line over and over that he said, I need to get clean. I need to get clean. I just need to get clean. Because he was so overwhelmed with all that he had done. He was trying to look out for his brothers. He was trying to make sure that everybody got paid. He was trying to make sure that people could take care of their families. But in doing all of that, he committed some crimes. And he was at this place, it's this climactic moment where he knew he was going to get caught or killed. And he just kept saying, I need to get clean. This is the place that we need to get to in our minds as we're choosing to be detectives and as we're choosing to use the work. I need to get still. I need to get still. I need to get still. And what does Byron Katie say? She says, I came to embrace reality with all my heart. I love the world without any conditions. And so what's so beautiful about this is then to understand that the work is an incredibly loving process. Because what the work is teaching us to be able to do is to live without conditions. Last year, was it March of last year, Unconditional Living? Or February of last year. Yeah, Unconditional Living was the series. Pastor Yolanda and I recognize that it's something that's so critical for us as master metaphysicians as we're walking through this planet, knowing that we create our life and knowing that our thoughts create our reality, knowing that we have to move into the place of unconditional living. Why? Because what does conditional living look like? If he doesn't hug me or acknowledge me, I'm in pain and pissed off. That's conditional. Because that's saying someone's behavior dictates my emotions. That's conditional living. Unconditional living says, regardless of how you show up, I still show up as the love that I am. And this is the place that she got to, and she recognizes that we can all get to as we use the work. I came to embrace reality with all my heart. I love the world without any conditions. You know, I think I said this last week, that one of the things I love about A Course in Miracles, the work, and the teachings of Abraham Hicks is it's one unified voice with just different inflections, right? And so as I read that and I hear the idea of I came to embrace with reality with all my heart, I love the world without conditions, it sounds like something that Abraham would say. Abraham is talking so often to us about unconditional living, right? And having a vibration that's unconditional. Because life out here, this is the stuff that we manipulate. And so just as an artist, if they saw something on the canvas that they didn't like, they wouldn't move into victimhood and say, oh no, the yellow's not working right. It really needs to be purple. Why won't it be purple? What does an artist do? It goes to its paints. It begins to mix up the paints because it's the creator. And it begins to change what's on the canvas. That's unconditional living. Conditional living is complaining and crying and pouting about what's on the canvas, forgetting that you're the artist, forgetting that you have paint, and forgetting that you can get I don't want to say it that way, forgetting that you could get a new canvas if you needed to. Sunday, I can't cuss. But you get a new freaking canvas. Just saying. When you recognize that you're the creator of your reality. And so the work is what allows us to do that. By doing the work and going through these questions, you're either going to repaint the picture, get a new canvas, destroy and burn that canvas, or recognize that you have the power and possibility to mix new colors and create something beautiful and more amazing. Happy trees, happy trees. Right? So the work is a loving process, and it's a loving act. And so what we get to do then, by investigating these beliefs, investigating a belief or questioning a belief, what we're doing is we're seeing if it holds up. Because we've just been believing that it holds up, but we don't really know what happens when we shine a light on our shoulds. What happens when we shine the light on our shouldn'ts? What happens when we shine a light on our alwayses or our nevers? Because if it's true, it's still going to be true. The light ain't going to change it if it's true. But are you willing to let go of, and next week we'll deal with the next question, who would you be without that thought? See, that's the thing. We shine the light on it, but then sometimes it's like, I don't know who I am without believing that everybody's against me. I don't know who I am without believing that all women are a certain way or all men are a certain way. I don't know who I am if I believe that I can only make a certain amount of money, that someone is stopping me from creating the career that I want or attracting the abundance that I don't know who I would be if I stopped following the fluctuations of the economy and start following the steady and ease of God's economy, always more than enough. I don't know who I would be. So again, I bring us back to what Byron Katie says. Be a detective. If you believe it's true, be a detective. We have these uninvestigated beliefs, these cold cases of the mind. And in order to be a detective, there's three things we're going to do. First, we know what the words are that we need to look for. What are the words? Should, shouldn't, always, and never. Great detectives. Y'all gonna pass. And then there's a question that we must always ask ourselves. What question must we ask ourselves? Whose business am I in? Oh, my goodness. And finally, we recognize that this is a meditative process. So we need to get still. We need to carve out the time. Schedule it if you must in your calendar. Because you recognize, I need to get clean. I need to get clear. I need to get still. And I'll leave you with this. Byron Katie writes, a thought is harmless unless we believe it. It is not our thoughts, but the attachment to our thoughts that causes suffering. Attaching to a thought means believing that it's true without inquiring. A belief is a thought that we've been attaching to often for years. Abraham Hicks puts it even simpler. A belief is simply a thought that you keep thinking. That's all it is. It's no more true than any other belief. But because we've been thinking it for so long, because in some cases our mother was thinking it so long and passed it on to us, in some cases our grandmother was thinking it for so long and passing it on to us, in some cases our society or our culture had been thinking it for so long that we think it's true. Hold it up to the light. We're celebrating Black History Month this month. And the one thing I love when we think about our beautiful ancestors, they held some of these beliefs up to the light. We have the beautiful sister, do you remember her name, who just made the Winter Olympics? Erin Jackson. Is that right? Erin Jackson? Speed skating. Powerful sister, right? Now she's doing something that's never been done before. She's the first African-American woman to make it into the Olympic team, long track speed skating. She just started skating 2 years ago. She just got on the ice for the first time 2 years ago. She is living black history. But if she had believed the false beliefs that black folk don't skate, if she had believed any of the false beliefs that maybe even her body type won't allow her to skate, she's a sister, y'all. So we recognize as we celebrate this beautiful month, all of the powerful, amazing accomplishments that were accomplished and are continuing to be accomplished. Our ancestors questioned some of those prevailing beliefs. It's the only way they could achieve. Because the outside world, the conditions were saying something else. The conditions were saying nobody's ever gone to Harvard before that looks like you. The conditions were saying, I've never seen a black person write poetry. The conditions were saying so many different things. But they questioned those thoughts, believed something different. And so now we're here able to celebrate and know this truth with them and benefit from their knowing so that we can surpass even what they believe to be true in their lifetime. So right here, right now, let's stand. Let's stand. Mother, Father, God, I am so grateful and thankful for the detectives in the room. I am so grateful for these powerful graduates of the police academy. We have taken the test, we have graduated, and we are ready to investigate. There's some unsolved murders that we are going to be able to solve. They're the cold cases that have been uninvestigated and haven't been looked at, that we are willing to hold up to the light. Because we recognize if it's true, it's always going to be true. Now follow me with this. There are people that are in jail wrongfully that through our investigation will be freed. Hear that. There's parts of yourself that are in bondage and in jail based on a belief. But when you investigate that belief, the doors are swung open. When you investigate that belief, you are found not guilty. When you investigate that belief, you are found that you are free. When you investigate that belief, you are exonerated. When you investigate that belief, not only that, but you're compensated. We are choosing to investigate these beliefs so that we can move into complete, absolute, unconditional freedom. And I am so grateful and thankful for these detectives, for these investigators that by their being here are showing their willingness to hold these thoughts up to the light, to do like our ancestors have done that we celebrate this month, to say that may be true for you, but it ain't true for me. To do like our ancestors have done and said, greater is the power of the divine within me than anything that is outside the world. To do like our ancestors have done, that says these shackles do not define me. To do like our ancestors have done and continue to achieve in spite of the conditions or the obstacles. So now we take belief where they could not take it. Now we take thought where they could not take it. We stand on their shoulders, for we are the fruition of their thought and their belief. We are manifested based on their desires. And so now we get to be even greater, even more powerful, even more beautiful, even more brilliant, even more amazing, even more fabulous. For this truth, I am so incredibly grateful. I now release this knowing, I now release this prayer back into the law, this law which is always in operation, this law which is always operating for our good and working with us at all times. We let it be, and by letting it be, we shout, amen, amen. Ashe. And so it is. So it is. Thank you, God.